But I'm also a lifelong fan of science fiction and fantasy, which I think is really important. Before you go into writing or editing in a genre, you really have to have an appreciation for it. And, this has just been my life as long as I can remember. So let's just dive right in here and talk about your first 10 pages. The fact is that in any sort of creative writing, and it doesn't matter the genre, whether you're writing science fiction or fantasy or mystery, romance, or literary fiction, it doesn't matter. Your book will live or die on the strength of the first 10 pages. Now, this is true really for anybody who hasn't already established a giant career as a franchise author, right? So if J.K. Rowling sends something to her editor, it's going to live or die based on her name. But for the rest of us who have to impress with our actual work, you really only have this first impression, and that's what those first 10 pages are. And generally speaking, those busy agents, editors, and even readers who are being pulled to different books by different authors, to video games, TV, and so on, aren't really going to give you the entire book to impress them. They're going to give you just that first impression, that first blush of the rose. And so that's why this is extremely important to start strong. You have to just get out there right away from the first word, from the first sentence, at least the first paragraph, and just grab hold of your readers and let them, and really force them to go on with you. So here's a Latin term that I think is extremely important, and this is advice that I've given to authors. I teach a college class in writing fantasy and science fiction. I do all sorts of seminars, including last October at the Writers Digest Conference West in LA. And I just try to tell everybody this one bit of advice I think is the most important in terms of starting out your story. And this Latin term, in media res, or media res, I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, let's be honest. I don't really speak Latin, but this one I know. And essentially it means in the middle of things. So what I'm trying to encourage you to do is start your book in the middle of something. Now, for science fiction and fantasy, a lot of times that can be some kind of, in the middle of some kind of fight scene or some sort of action set piece. But it doesn't necessarily have to be, and I think sometimes we get a little bit too wrapped up in the fighting and the action and that kind of thing in this genre. But in general, what I'm really talking about is in the middle of some sort of a scene where characters are in conflict, because that's what a story is. It's characters in conflict with each other or with some sort of a force, something. And, so if you just sort of dive right in, you're going to grab your readers and drag them along with you. So here's an example from a book that I wrote, which I'm going to go ahead and leave nameless for now if you want to go and do the research and figure out what book this was from. Because, every author has a list of books, the one you want them to remember you for, and on that list is the one you wish would drop off the face of the earth, never to be seen from again. And other than the first sentence, that's this book for me. But I'm very proud of this one, and I think this kind of encapsulates what I've been trying to say. The blades came together so hard they threw out a blue-white spark bright enough to burn its gentle arc into Abdel's vision. So right there, that's the very first sentence of the novel. And notice how I'm not explaining in any way who this person is, who he's fighting, why he's there, what he's doing, what the world is like. It's just this sudden burst of action. You're getting, right in the middle, it starts up with something tragic is going on. And in this case, it is that very typical fantasy. In this case, it was a sword and sorcery novel that was very action first. So it was about these guys having a sword fight, but it doesn't have to be. And here's a couple of more, or three more examples that I pulled out of books from my own collection. One of the great masters, of course, Edgar Rice Burroughs, who's really one of the creators of the fantasy genre and one of my favorite authors of all time. From John Carter of Mars, this is the first sentence. The moons of Mars looked down upon a giant Martian thoat as it raced silently over the soft, mossy ground. Now note that he's not starting in the middle of a fight like I was. And there is no violence happening here necessarily. But again, he's not necessarily explaining what a thode is, although this is the 11th book in the series, so I think if you've read the first 10, you'll know what a thode is. But and he's placing it in a place. The moons of Mars look down, and it raced silently over the soft, mossy ground. There's a mood that's being established there. Something, and why would something race? It's you don't race to go to bed. You race to go get something that's important, or to do something important, or to get away from something that you want to get away from. So there's a sense of conflict in there, even without that very overt two guys are having a sword fight. The next example, of course, is it's a classic, Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card.